I think I've heard you mention that you cured yourself of heartburn or GERD. Could you share with us how you did this? Thank you. Ooh, yes, that's one of the really painful ones. There are lots of different reasons why people have this issue. Personally, my severe GERD had to do with my medication. So things like taking steroids can cause heartburn. I also lived off caffeine at the time. I was finishing medical school, going into residency, and I only consumed liquid if it was caffeinated. So it was Diet Coke and coffee. Not proud of it, but I'm a person. I've grown, okay? So I had a lot of caffeine, which is really bad for that. And I was eating a processed, unhealthy diet, very high in things like dairy and eggs and things like that, and junk. Even when I changed my diet, though, I had trouble healing it. And that's one of the things that I learned was that when it comes to GERD and reflux, sometimes the pain will linger even after you change the lifestyle issues because you have an injury. If you think of it this way, the reason that reflux burns is because you have acid in your stomach, right? You have actual acid, hydrochloric acid. And when you eat, the food goes into the stomach, that acid helps break it down. Now, the reason the acid doesn't hurt your stomach is your stomach has a layer of protection, this nice lining that secretes a nice mucus that keeps the cells safe so that we can release the acid, but it doesn't burn us. Now, your esophagus does not have that. Your esophagus has a different kind of cellular structure. So it has a sphincter at the bottom. Yes, a sphincter, just like other sphincters, that it closes really tight so the food goes down. You swallow, the sphincter opens, lets the food in, closes again. And it's supposed to be tight so that nothing can come back up. And so therefore, the acid can turn around in your stomach and break stuff down, and then it only moves in one direction down into the colon. But if you have certain issues going on, especially if that sphincter is not working properly, or if you have something like a hiatal hernia, underneath your heart and lungs, there's a muscle that goes straight across, and it's called your diaphragm, and it keeps the intestines and the organs of the lower half of your body, so your liver and your spleen and your kidneys and your intestines, they are in a separate compartment under the diaphragm. And above the diaphragm, just lungs and heart and esophagus goes through the middle to lead to the stomach, right? So the esophagus has to go through a little hole in the diaphragm that allows just the esophagus to go through the diaphragm, and the stomach's right under here, right? But for some people, that hole's a little big, and so the stomach comes up and pokes up. It gets squeezed. And if you squeeze the stomach hard enough, then some of the contents can go back up into the esophagus. So let me tell you the things that help the most when it comes to this. So number one, the things that I did, changing my diet, eating a hyper-nourishing plant-based diet, taking out the oils. Oils also tend to create more acid, cutting way down on caffeine. I mean, at the time I took it out completely. Now I can enjoy an espresso and I don't have any reflux. And then I also needed medication because I had a burn. If that acid comes into the esophagus, it actually burns the esophagus. It's a physical burn. It's not just a burning sensation. You're physically burning with acid. Like if you imagine if you put acid on your hand, you would get a physical burn. That's happening in the esophagus. When that's happening on a daily basis, then the esophagus tissue is inflamed and it's injured. Now, if that happens every day for a long time, you can get change of the esophageal tissue where it starts to look more like the stomach. That's called Barrett's esophagus, which is a precancerous condition. And that's why your doctor tends to be very aggressive about managing GERD or reflux, because we don't want people to have those changes happen in the esophagus that could become precancer. So if you can imagine that if you have a burn in your esophagus, even if you ate the healthiest food, you just ate some broccoli and it slides down over that irritated burn tissue, it's gonna hurt. I could gently just put a piece of lettuce over a burn on my skin, it's gonna hurt because it's injured. So one of the things that helped me heal, because I was still hurting from injury, is I took a medicine actually called sucralfate or carafate. And all it is a chalky substance that coats the esophagus. So if you take it like a half an hour before your meals, it coats your esophagus. And that way when you eat, the food goes in, and if any acid comes up, it doesn't touch it, and the food doesn't touch it either. And so I found when I used that, in addition to my lifestyle changes, when I stopped the sucralfate, I was able to get off of my Nexium, and I never had a problem again. The other thing that really helps, make the meals really small. If we keep the stomach less full, then there's less pressure to force things back up. So what I recommend is that you take all your meals for the day, you split them up into little servings. If you eat 3 meals a day, turn it into 6 or more. And then eat every 2 hours or so, because that's how long it takes for your stomach to empty. There's other things like making sure while it's still irritated that you sleep on an angle, that you don't eat at least a few hours before bed so that it doesn't have an easy path of going up there. It is very painful, but it can get better.